What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the new tier list that is Need for Speed. We're going to be going back through the ages and ranking every single Need for Speed that has been produced that is a main game. So we've gone from the likes of Carbon to Pro Street all the way to the new game, which is Unbound. We've played, to be honest, quite a lot of them. There is a few that unfortunately I didn't play, and that is just down to not being born yet, or at least being born and probably not playing games until at least 4 or 5. So unfortunately, the original Need for Speed, which came out in 1994, the Need for Speed, I didn't unfortunately play. Same as Need for Speed 2, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit. I believe my first Need for Speed was either Hot Pursuit 2 or the iconic Underground. So we're just going to go ahead and put in some of the original Need for Speeds that unfortunately I just didn't play. So there's no point kind of ranking them. I didn't personally get them. And same with Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed, which is 2000. All of these were PlayStation 1. I believe there was a Saturn was Need for Speed as well. Again, didn't even know that console existed. So now we've gone through some of the ones we didn't play. It is time to have a look at the ones we did. Personally, Need for Speed Underground was absolutely elite. It was probably the first time a racing game really caught my eye, as I was mainly towards Xbox. PlayStation 2 was obviously elite as well. We played a little bit of Gran Turismo, but we never then went to the PS3. We went to the Xbox 360 and Xbox as well, so we kind of missed out on that and joined late with Forza. But Need for Speed Underground, wherever I can find it, I don't even know where the cover is gone. Where is it? Oh, there it is. That one, for me, is going in absolute god tier, and it's got to be followed by Need for Speed Underground 2. That definitely was one of the most iconic games for me that ever existed in the Need for Speed franchise. And there's one other that I'd probably say my two favorite, Need for Speed Underground 2, and obviously, and I think a lot of people will agree with this, Need for Speed Carbon was an absolute beautiful game. Other than that, I'd say them three were the best that I played ever, in general. Then you go to some absolute solid ones. I think with Need for Speed Most Wanted, it was definitely a solid game, but I wouldn't say it was long enough, and the free roam aspect of it was practically non-existent. So I think for me, that one could have been a god tier one, which came unfortunately in the middle of Need for Speed Underground 2 and obviously Carbon. So it came out in 2005. Obviously, pretty much everything came out on PlayStation, Xbox, the whole shebang. And then actually one that I didn't play purely for the base, that it only came out on the Wii, and that is Need for Speed Nitro. Again, didn't know that one even existed. And the next one up is Need for Speed Shift. Honestly, I felt like these could have been better. I felt like the number one was okay. It was probably more meh. But then when they went to Shift 2, I just really wasn't a fan. I feel like the two orders for them, I really just didn't like them two ones. I felt like once they kind of went through them, it was Need for Speed Shift in 2009. That was Xbox 360 and probably one of the first. I think it was, in fact, I think Most Wanted came out on Xbox 360. Then it was Carbon, Pro Street. Pro Street again was okay. I personally wasn't a huge fan of it, but most definitely was a solid game in my opinion. Then it went to Shift, wasn't a big fan of it, and then that kind of like dwindled my liking for Need for Speed for quite some time there. Need for Speed World came out on just the PC. At this point, I think, what's that, in 2010, because we had a period where it was like 2010, 11, 12. We got 2 games every year, which obviously for this one kind of doesn't count because it was a free game and it was only on Windows. I didn't have a PC to play it on. I was mainly just absolutely bashing out the 360. So realistically, didn't really get a go on that one. Then we went from there. We looked at Hot Pursuit. I think I played this game a little bit later, and just because it was through the eyes of obviously being a cop. You could play with obviously your car as well, but with it being the cop aspect, I felt like it got very tedious very quickly, and that kind of then really dwindled off for quite some time there. We had Hot Pursuit, I thought personally meh. If we just kind of fast forward a little bit before then going back, I think Need for Speed Rivals, again, it's very similar, and I do think it's a solid game, but with obviously the same opinion of Hot Pursuit. it was only okay in my opinion, so it's gonna have to go in the meh category. I think in terms of solid, it was definitely closer than obviously Shift and Hot Pursuit, but I do think it's definitely not in the same category as Most Wanted. Then we had Need for Speed Undercover. That one came out in 2008. Again, a solid game. I felt like it was following the trend of kind of like the new Need for Speed franchise. They had a great start with Underground, obviously from the Xbox users and my personal generation, and they just kept it going. And then it slowly dwindled off when they just tried to make too many games. But I think once we got into the latter stages, we started looking at Heat, we started looking at normal, just Need for Speed, Unbound, Payback. They're very, very top games for me. I think Unbound, if I'm kind of going for this generation, would I say it's God? I don't think it's God tier. I think it's a very, very good game. Well put together. Great audio on it. The storyline fits nicely. Not too long, but most definitely there isn't much of an end product at the end. So once you've done all of the career, which I think took about 10 hours at max, and that's kind of just dilly-dallying with it, you're kind of left a little bit stuck. There's not really much else to do. So I think in terms of solid, that is where it's going to go. It could go God tier with DLC. Definitely a big upgrade onto a new story quest or online. Something to add that extra wow factor. That could be pushed up still, but most definitely I think solid is the way. Same with Payback and Heat. I played these games a little bit later than obvious release because they were added to the Game Pass with obviously the addition of EA Access. So again, we managed to kind of finish both games quite late on, and I enjoyed both of them. I think for me, they flowed well. You could do a lot of races. There was some open world play. I think in general, both of them will be coming into solid, and that leads us on to the final three. The Run came out in 2011 with the release of Shift 2, which I think was definitely better than Shift 2. Still not necessarily incredible. I would like to have just put it around about there. So straight in the middle would have been where I'd personally put it. Unfortunately, it will go under just because the caliber of games here. Pro Street probably is one of the latter ones in terms of where I'm looking this list right now. I'd probably be looking somewhere. I did enjoy Payback a little bit more, I think. Was it? I think it might have been the other way around. Let me just check, because it was the newest one. Yeah, 2019. So it would have been more like that. I'd say Most Wanted, Unbound, Heat, Payback, Undercover, Pro Street. Then obviously the meh is just a whole load of category. We did have Need for Speed in the middle of all of this, which I believe came out in 2015 alongside No Limits. Again, No Limits was one of them ones. It was just on I think it was on Android and iOS, so again, mobile games don't really count too much, but in terms of Need for Speed, again, a solid game. I think it came out quite in the time to get everybody back into focus with it. It was, I think it was the first, I don't think it was the first crossplay game. I think that was coming in either Payback or Heat, but in general, I think it was an intentional reboot that they needed to have, because they were releasing so many games and so many different stories. They could have definitely just kept on with the line of the carbon theme, but I think Need for Speed definitely was a back to basics and a nice upgrade. And then finally we have Need for Speed Most Wanted. The newest version of it came out in 2012, again across consoles. It was the PS3, Xbox 360, and again a solid game in my opinion. I think it came out quite nicely. We obviously all loved the Most Wanted way back, and it was again a nice classic EA Need for Speed game, and I think that for me would be the list I'd go for in terms of kind of my era of playing. Again, these unfortunately just we were too young to play or just didn't get a chance to. We then look at Shift. I just didn't enjoy that franchise start of it. Then we had a few others that just were a little bit forced in my opinion, but I think in terms of the solid and god tier games, they were absolutely elite. Need for Speed 2 Underground would have been my most iconic one that I played, but Carbon would definitely be my favorite. So let me know down below your favorite Need for Speed game. Make sure you like and subscribe on this, and I'll catch you all for the next one. Peace.